Hello, everybody, again. It's time now. We're going to start. I'm just going to introduce your host. And I think that he's interviewed everyone on the stage who's coming on the stage today on his show. He's interviewed everyone who was on Ancient Aliens on his show, or on Coast to Coast, where he stands in for George Norrie sometimes. And you know him as the host of Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network, and various shows on the History Channel as well. So let's give a warm welcome to Jimmy Church.
Yo. Good evening. How is everybody? Unbelievable. Welcome to the 2019 Conscious Life Expo. And as you probably know, we're also broadcasting all around the world right now. How cool is that? Give it up. Let's go. Okay. We've got a lot to do tonight. I'm going to jump into this as quick as I can. But before I do, there's more. Don't relax. Tonight's a very, very special evening. It's very special. 50 years, Chariots of the Gods. And everybody in this room, everybody here has a Chariots of the Gods story. Everybody here. The first time you read the book, how you got the book, how it changed you. I'm just like you. I have the same story. And for me, I was 1970. I'm 8 years old. My mom, she's not with us anymore. She's real cool, crazy lady, says, check out this book. She gives me a copy of Chariots of the Gods, right? And a couple of years later, I read this. I'm 8 years old. And then the movie comes out. And we all remember that, the impact of that, right? The movie. And back then, 3 channels, right? Plus some UHF. And the commercials would come on. And when the commercials would come on, I would wait for the commercials. And the Nazca lines, right? The plane. And I'm like 9 years old, just mind blown, right? Whoa. My mom goes, "You want to go see the movie?" And that changed my life. And everybody here is nodding because you all have the same exact stories, don't you? Don't you? I want to hear it. Right? We do. So this career path started for me. And here I am today. I'm 55. And it's 50 years after this book is released. And I am able to interview and meet people and do things because of that book. That book is what brought me here. That book is what brought everybody in this room tonight. Look at this. Look at how many people are here. That book brought you here. I like to take selfies. That little 7-year-old kid, Eric Von Daniken, man, I'm reading his stuff. And I grow up and I take this selfie. Bust it up on the screen. I want you to take a look at that selfie. How does, I got a lump in my throat. How does a little kid grow up admiring somebody like Eric Von Daniken and have the opportunity to take a selfie like that? And look, you don't see Tsoukalos in his hair. You don't see Jason Martell in his teeth. You don't even see me. Look at that man in the background, Eric Von Daniken. And that's who we are celebrating tonight. He changed my life. He changed yours, and I would like everybody to welcome to this stage, up on your feet, Mr. Eric Von Daniken. Let's come out to the center here. Mr. Eric Von Daniken. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Eric on Coast to Coast, and I'm sure you guys all listened in, and that was great. And Eric and I talked before the show that night. And I said, Eric, let's have fun. Let's enjoy this interview. And Eric said this to me. He goes, Jimmy, you're loud, you're funny, and you're smart. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. And he got 2 out of 3 right. Do you remember that, Eric? Oh, yeah. Now, really quick, before we sit down and enjoy this evening of celebration, I just have to ask you, 50 years ago, did you have any idea that you would change the world and affect people's lives like you have, where it continues to this day, where you have caused a paradigm shift for so many people? Did you have any idea this was going to happen?
When Chariots of the Gods was on the market, the German-speaking market, I was sure I was sitting on a volcano. And of course, I was crashed down by everybody. But I was never thinking that this would become a worldwide phenomenon. Now it happened. In the meantime, more than 76 million books entitled Chariots of the Gods are on the market, and we have a change in the spirit of time.
On behalf of everybody listening around the world, everybody here tonight, the 2019 Conscious Life Expo tonight, we are celebrating 50 years of Chariots of the Gods. Eric, stand right there for a second. This book has meant so much to me, and do I know you? Have we ever met? Okay, that's good enough. Come on up on the stage. Just come up here. I need your help. Stand right here. And if you could, because I need both hands, hold this book for me. I need you to answer 2 questions and then repeat after me. Would you do that?
Me?
The answer is, what is your name?
Ariel Elmiel.
Ariel, right? What is your favorite color?
Pink.
Pink. Okay, I want you to turn to Eric, and I want you to repeat after me. Say, Eric.
Eric.
Mr. Von Daniken.
Mr. Von Daniken.
Would you please sign my copy of Chariots of the Gods? Say it.
Would you please sign my copy of Chariots of the God?
It is a great pleasure. I'm honored to do this for you. Thank you.
Oh, wait. Of course, you need this. Ariel, what a champion, right? This is a special moment. This is what life is all about. Thank you so much. Ariel, thank you so much for being a champion. Mr. Von Daniken, if you could, take the seat of honor in the middle, and let's kick this things off. Are you guys ready? Are you ready? Oh, I don't believe you. Are you ready? We know her as a researcher, a director, a producer, a documentarian, and of course, the proprietor of Earth Files, earthfiles.com, Linda Moulton Howe. Linda, come on out.
Where is Linda? Hey.
This young man is changing things right now for our community. He's got millions of dedicated followers on social media seeking knowledge. He's an author. I just recently wrote the foreword to his new book. I'm very honored to welcome to the 2019 Conscious Life Expo, Mr. Billy Carson. Billy. I interviewed this young man a couple of weeks ago on Coast to Coast. He's also featured on Ancient Aliens. He's a teacher. He's an author. He's amazing. And he also rides a Harley Davidson. Please welcome Rabbi Ariel Bar Zadok.
Oh, Rabbi, where are you? Okay.
Next up, he has been with Ancient Aliens since its inception. X-Facts, when it comes to the axis of this earth, the precession of time, and everything ancient knowledge, and also featured on the cover of Men's Health magazine, Jason Martell. Jason, come on out. Well, come down next to me, Jason.
Appreciate the Men's Health part. Not quite.
I was going to say GQ, but all right. Wow, what an honor. And let's just start where we should start. I want to start with Mr. Eric von Daniken, of course. And Eric, I have two questions for you. And everybody here wants to leave with something that they didn't know when they came in. You've been asked every question, Ed, that could possibly be asked of you. But I'm going to ask you something that hopefully you've never been asked. Is there one thing in Chariots of the Gods that people don't pay attention to that makes you angry? Is there one thing that you want people to know more about and understand?
Well, Chariots of the Gods was a very provocative book. And what people never realized, in Chariots of the Gods, I have 238 question marks. People don't see the question marks. That's the difference.
Why is that, actually?
Well, because in Chariots of the Gods, I was not completely sure of everything what I wrote. Of course, I was on the right track, but I had myself a lot of question marks. In the meantime, I'm an old man. I'm 84 years old, and I have no more question marks.
Well, there you go. We just learned something. Second question. What is your favorite part of the book? All of the sites, all of the evidence, the Colombian, right? Right? Okay. What's your favorite piece of evidence in the book?
Well, in Chariots of the Gods, you have to differentiate between evidences coming out from old holy writings and facts, evidence you can see and touch and photograph. And the best evidence in Chariots of the Gods is definitely the tombstone of Palenque. Palenque is a Maya city in Central America, and there is a pyramid called the Temple of Inscription, and deep under this pyramid, in the ground, 7 meters under the pyramid, in 1952, they found a tomb. The tomb was a 7 meters high room filled with stalactites and stalagmites, which means the tomb must be very, very old, because 7 meter long stalactites and stalagmites. They pushed away these stalactites, and they were standing on a big stone plate, big, 3.80 meters long, 2.20 meters large. That's quite a block from there to here. And on the stone, an incredible chiseling. You see something like a frame, and in the middle of the frame, a man is sitting, bending forward, almost like a racing motorcyclist. You see he has a mask on his nose. He uses his upper hand, clearly you can see, to manipulate some controls. You see the lower hand, you still see the forefinger of the back of his hand. He's manipulating, he's winding something up. He's sitting on a chair, and outside of the frame you see a linking flame. Now, this was absolutely sensational in Chariots of the Gods. I was the first one who published and have written about this. I published the picture. Of course, archaeology has come with a lot of counter-arguments. They said, well, this is just the second last ruler of the city of Palenque. His name is Pakal, which is true. It is Pakal, it is represent. And then they said, he's not sitting in a frame. He's sitting in the open mouth of a mythological monster. So he's dying. And, out of his chest, the tree of life is coming and the cross of life is coming. And a lot of archaeological nonsense. You don't believe it. In the meantime, over 50 years have passed. And the newest scientific explanation, really top scientists, are the two American professors, Stewart and Stewart, the father and the son. That's why they have the same name. They are the best Maya specialists who can now translate the writing which is around the tombstone. And they say, yes, it is Pakal. Pakal was the second last ruler of Palenque, but Pakal is representing on the tombstone everything which has to do with the cosmos, the universe. He's leaving our planet Earth. So finally, after 50 years, they changed their mind and say, come on, Eric von Daniken was not so bad.
Oh, I thought it was on the cover of this. You know, one of the things that blew my mind, and I'm speaking for everybody in this room, was the image of the little sphere with the flames coming off the back and the little point on the front and the little dude in the middle of it. Yes, right? With the little pilot looking out the window. You know, and he's kind of like, and he's steering. What else could that be but what is in the image, Eric? I mean, is there another explanation for that?
Now, you know, to understand all these things, be it the tombstone of Palenque or be it that example from Yugoslavia, you have to understand what cargo cult is. Very brief. When two societies came together, a technological high society and a technological low society, the lower society does not understand the technology of the higher society. And then they start to imitate stuff, which they have seen. All through they don't know what it is. They imitate it. So the same thing happened with the tombstone of Palenque. They saw somebody in a sort of car moving, etc. And they chiseled it, copied something. The same thing happened with the Yugoslavia. You know, the man who is looking backward, he is in a sort of a UFO or whatever. And he's obviously looking back. He's afraid because somebody is following him. Somebody tries to shoot him down. But this is all cargo cult. This is all imitation.
It changed the world, Eric, and it is very rare that somebody changes the world, changes minds, and you did just that. And I'm going to say it as we continue one more time. I would like everybody to show your appreciation. You changed the world, Eric.
Thank you. Okay, yes, thank you for your understanding. Yes, I'm happy. The situation has changed. You know, in the beginning, I mean 50 years ago, every serious personality was against it. You were crashed down by the scientific community. You were crashed down by the astronomers. You were crashed down by the archaeologists. Of course, by the theologians, because in Chariots of the God, I was speaking about the prophet Ezekiel in the Old Testament. And I said Ezekiel did not have a vision. He really saw a chariot, the flying chariot. He describes it with the wings and the wheels. By the way, tomorrow in my speech, I will give you the most modern explanation concerning Ezekiel, etc. So it has changed the world. And in the past, 50 years ago, they said, the scientific community, even if von Däniken is right, even if maybe extraterrestrials do exist somewhere, they would never look like humans. Extraterrestrials, they would look like some monsters with tentacles or whatever, but never like humans. And in the meantime, we know we are simply copies of it. The so-called gods created humans according to their own image. So this does not exclude that you have monsters out there, but there are beings, extraterrestrials, similar to us, or we are similar to them. So in the meantime, the situation has changed. And they said, even if this is possible, extraterrestrials do exist, they do look like human, then we would never come together because the distances between the stars are measured in light years, and you have no technical way to cross these light years. In the meantime, we know, yes, it is possible. We know how we could do it, how we could travel without reaching speed of light. Just with 1 or 2% of the speed of light, we can do it. So the situation has changed. In the meantime, all this crash down has stopped, at least among the reasonable people. And slowly we start to understand, hey, we must think it over. You know, the gods of antiquity, the so-called gods, were in reality astronauts. And by saying so, you never lose your God. You know, I suppose that we were visited by beings from outer space in Stone Age time. Our Stone Age people could not understand what these visitors were because it was a high technology. So they believed that these visitors are the gods or some gods. It's all a misunderstanding. We all know there are no gods. There's only one God. So if you accept this basic idea, you have to say, all right, so we were visited by beings from outer space. Where do they come from? What is their evolution? You can go on and say they were visited by another solar system. Okay, where did they come from? So you can continue the game for hundreds, thousands or millions of years. Finally, you come to a starting point where in every respect, with religion, you have to say, here is God, here is creation. So you never lose the real God. I am still one of these figures who pray every evening.
Thank you for that. And with all of the critics, Eric, over the years, you've written 30 plus books, you've kept up the good fight, but they kept the pressure on you too as well. Was there ever a point, thank goodness you didn't give up, but was there ever a point where you're like, you know what, I'm just tired. I can't do this anymore?
No, that's not my character. As more as I am attacked, as more I fight back. I'm a good fighter, yeah.
As it should be. Let's go to Rabbi Ariel Barzadok. Rabbi, I'm going to ask the same question with all of the panelists tonight, because we all have that one thing that we got from Chariots of the Gods. For you, what's the one thing that you want the world to know about Chariots of the Gods? What's the one thing that stirs you?
Well, I would think my experience with the book might be different from many others. I came to the book at a very much older age, probably I would think in my 30s or older. Obviously, I'm very well aware of what...
You don't look but 35.
Well, I'm obviously very well aware of what Eric has written, and needless to say, there are things that we do disagree with, but that's not the point. It's not even important. Why? Simply because what Eric has been doing is creating a phenomena. Matter of fact, the point that Linda and I were discussing just before we came onto our panel tonight, we were discussing how things happen in certain ways, in certain times. Like the Bible says, there's a time and a purpose for all things under heaven. Or what Carl Jung would say, that there are actually like waves that happen in the collective unconscious. Revelations come in all kinds of different ways. Doesn't necessarily have to come from a religious figure through the context of any kind of a spiritual movement. I mean, I've shared this with Eric. I've shared this with the producers of, Prometheus, who make the Ancient Aliens TV program, that they've created a phenomena because they've opened up the floodgates to ask many, many questions. From my background in the Kabbalistic Torah tradition, I will say we haven't asked enough questions yet. What we're looking at, the examples that we've discussed tonight, there are all kinds of ideas and beliefs that people have. But like Eric said, the question marks, those must never disappear. They must always be there, because I think we're just at the surface of understanding things. Our tradition, as we've shared on our radio interviews, is not that they come from out there, but that they came from here, that they evolved from here, and that they are us. Pre-Adamic civilizations who've been here on Earth maybe even millions of years, we don't know. And as such, they have gone to the stars, and that is why they have such a connection to our planet and to us. We're their children, and that is the way that we've always understood things. And in that respect, the methods and ways in the prophetic tradition, through psychic telepathic involvement, how we maintain contact and communication.
Are you suggesting then that Chariots of the Gods has given you the comfort zone for going public with such radical ideas?
Well,
where, yeah, you laugh, right?
I don't consider the ideas that I represent to be radical. I'm actually representing classical, traditional, orthodox, rabbinic, Kabbalistic teachings that are readily available in dozens of Hebraic texts in any Jewish bookstore around the world. Those people want to pick them up and learn. That's the point.
Right.
And like I was sharing, what Eric has done and what is now happening, why we're here, it's all, if you will, in quote, sign of the times. Things are progressing. Consciousness, knowledge is evolving. And Eric is part of that. It's not just that he's an author who writes a book because that's what we have to do to, make a living. No, this is much greater than that. And he's part of a phenomena. We are part of a phenomena. Everyone who's here is part of a phenomena. And it is a continuing growth process that's happening. And I don't think we've even, like I said, scratched the surface of what we have yet to discover.
That's heavy, right? Thank you. Billy Carson. Billy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Jimmy.
Billy, forbidden knowledge, the things that you talk about, the things that you are bringing forward, it's absolutely amazing in your knowledge of ancient Egypt and going further back than that. And you actually get out there and go around the world and do what's supposed to be done. You do the research. Where'd you just get back from?
Well, I technically just got back from Tahiti.
Okay, see what I'm saying? Lots of Mayan culture in Tahiti. But
I just got back from Peru, Machu Picchu, Cusco, Lima, of course the Nazca lines. It was a great trip, phenomenal.
Didn't you propose to somebody in Machu Picchu?
Yes, my fiance is sitting right here in the audience.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Got me beat on that one. How do you top that? You know, Rita looks at me like, what's your problem? What's your problem? So for you, with Chariots of the Gods, right? It's the thing that changes all of us. What's the one thing that you take away from Chariots of the Gods?
One of the most amazing things that I could take away from Chariots of the Gods were the Nazca lines. I mean, the first time I had my experience with it was the actual movie. So I didn't have the book first. And so how it tied in with the Nazca lines was when I was a young child in my backyard, I saw a UFO. We lived close to an airport, and this UFO came over my backyard. I knew it was not an airplane. This is like 1977. So an airplane, I knew what it looked like, but UFOs weren't in my mind. They weren't on TV. We only had 3 or 4 channels back then. So it wasn't like I was being pre-programmed into thinking about UFOs. I just knew that this object didn't look like an airplane. So I started researching, and then I came across information at the library through the Encyclopedia Britannica about all the different forms of aerospace technology that was available to us, and I couldn't find anything like what I saw. Then a few years later, I came across information about Chariots of the Gods, and I never really looked into it too much. I just saw the book and never really read it. But then a few years after that, then I ended up seeing the movie, and I was blown away. My mom, I was trying to explain to my mom what I saw, and she sat me down and told me about the Nazca lines. And she told me, this is back in, a long time ago, and she's telling me that there was she thought it might have been an ancient airport in Peru. And it blew me away. And then when I saw the movie and then eventually read the book, it just was like one of the biggest driving forces I had to get there. It was on the top of my to-do list.
Let me jump in and just say that a couple of months ago, Billy flies to Peru and shoots a video, him in the plane, flying over the Nazca lines with his fiance there, right? Flying over the Nazca lines, and his excitement of shooting this video was absolutely incredible. And I have to say, what was that like, flying over the Nazca lines after seeing it for so many years?
It was a dream come true because, my mom, bless her soul, has passed away. And she used to tell me about a lot of ancient things. And my family's been tied into a lot of very strange things like, top secret, architecture with NASA. And my grandfather's team was tasked to go out and refurbish the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx and things like this. So it was like one of the things I just felt like I was going on the same path and journey as my family members, and living out, maybe fulfilling their wishes and their dreams, through me, just through some of the conversations that we had. So it was a great experience. It was a life-changing experience. And I want to thank my fiance because she actually bought me that trip for my birthday. It was my birthday gift.
It didn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Linda. How you doing, Linda?
Well, I am provoked by what he's saying because I was flying in a Piper Cub over the Nazca lines in 1986 in June. Oh. And the pilot was nice enough to say, I can take you anywhere for at least an hour and a half. And one of the things that I really wanted to get down low, and I said to him, that 6 mile long triangle
Right.
that some people call airport, or I would really like for you to go down as low as you can, and I want to photograph as we go. And he said, you're going to be surprised because you hear all about Maria Reich saying that these were trudged by the feet of locals, right? He said, wait till you see what it looks like for real. So we're in this Piper Cub. I've got the camera ready. He starts coming down right at the end of the, goes for 6 miles. I still have the photographs. And it was as if you took pressure and you pressed down a couple of feet into the soil from the surface for 6 miles. And NASA and others have done laser where you look at what the edges are, and lasers on that are nearly perfect.
Straight.
So the pilot said, I can fly you for an hour from the Nazca Plain, and he did. And we went up from what everybody goes, we went into the Andes. And there were patterns impressed into the ground an hour out of Nazca. And I said, why is this not being reported? Why is the Reich point of view that these are people trudging through ground with their feet? And he said, because people have made money on tourism the other way. And he said, those of us who live here and fly, we know this is not possible. He said, I know, and he took me up to another high. It was really high. It isn't any place that people could have walked and trudged. And it went like in, if you go about, let's see, it's about 90 minutes outside of Nazca, maybe an hour. There's another area that has a tremendous number of geometries. And it's quite different than the plains of Nazca. The pilots that fly that region, they look at the whole thing. We only hear about the plains of Nazca. And he said, when you go to the altitudes that some of these patterns are an hour going into the Andes, nobody could do this. That was 1986 with a pilot flying me around. And those photos that I have of that 6 miles, and it's pressed in, and he said to me, how would anybody on the planet do this? And obviously on the other side is where Eric introduced, from my point of view, the truth. And you know, Eric, I don't know if you've talked with Michio Kaku at NYU, but I interviewed Michio Kaku, the scientist who has done a variety of books having to do with hyperspace and black holes and time travel. And Michio Kaku told me, and he's written about this very thing, he said, we are very provincial on the Earth. We constantly are referencing everything through us when it should be the other way around. That if you are in a 13.8 billion light year universe, that's almost 12. You can divide it by four epochs, and you'll have 3 billion per. Mm-hmm. This planet is 4.6 billion years old. So we can easily be in the last of, say, 4 epochs in the universe. And that's where he comes up with other civilizations. So that the Palenque astronaut would be an advanced intelligence that came, mixed genes. This Earth has been used, I think, as a laboratory for millions of years. And because we are humanoid, it's because there are humanoids out there. And one other really important thing to share with this audience who probably has read John Keel. I flew back from a conference around probably 92, somewhere in there, with John Keel. And we were on an airliner, and we had been at a conference, and Bud Hopkins and Keel and I had been talking about several things. And I said to him, in a kind of innocence, I'm coming into all of this through animal mutilations, which people have a very hard time with, but from my point of view, talking with the government, it's a genetic harvest. And all kinds of containers are made, and it actually has a logic if you come from outside of the universe to Earth, not Earth going out. And the entire issue of why are we the way we are, I said to John Keel on that airliner, where do you put the grays, the reptiles, the praying mantises, the tall whites? And I remember he was a big man. He was really quite huge. And he sort of pulled himself up in the airline seat, and he looked at me and he says, Linda, there's nothing in this universe except humanoids. And I'd never heard this before. This goes all the way back to around 1992. And I said, why? Why are you saying that? He said, because the original prime intelligence in this universe, it's humanoid. We are like them.
Wow. John
Because
Keel.
they manipulated DNA here.
Goes right back to what the rabbi said earlier. Yeah, go ahead.
When she was talking about Nazca, and on television, you always see Nazca pictures. I mean, birds, spiders, monkeys, all these figures. Tomorrow in my speech, I show you Nazca lines, which you have never seen. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, because they exist way beyond the plane.
Exactly.
That's the part that people don't hear about.
Jason Martell. Smile for everybody. Look at them chops. All right, Jason Martell. Jason, you have been involved with Ancient Aliens since its inception. You have a great relationship, but how has Chariots of the Gods changed you? What's the one? So Jason comes up to me backstage. Check it out, man. 1968 edition. You can't even touch it. Don't even look at it. I got it right here. This is it. He had it in his pocket. How has it changed you?
Well, so there. I know we only want to talk about one thing, but so there's the book, but then there was also the video of Chariots of the Gods.
That's right.
Then there's also The Mysteries Continue, Part 2. And so just one comment about the Nazca piece. In his video, when you go up into the mountains there, these geometric patterns that you see everywhere, and I always remember his comments because he'd be like, there's scorpions everywhere, so I wouldn't go there. But when you go up from a height and look down, there's not just lines. You see these very advanced diagrams, and I'd never seen that outside of Eric's research. And that's clearly something beyond just, some tribe scraping things in the ground. There's literally, complex math happening there. But the one thing that really caught my attention that I always thought was interesting, and I'm hoping maybe Eric will speak about it, is in The Mysteries Continue, you actually show, and I forgot where it is, I apologize, it might be Chichen Itza, I'm not sure, but you actually show that some of these pyramids were topped with a white covering, a bright white covering, and you actually went to some spot where you opened up a part of the ground where they had been throwing this mica, the stone, the mica in there, and explaining how it was a very rare stone that used to top the pyramid. That, to me, was fascinating because there's all these rumors about even the Egyptian pyramids and other pyramids having an outside coating that was much more complex. And so that was one of the things I think that really caught my attention, to keep it short. But I'd love to hear your comments on that mica because, boy, that really caught my attention.
Well, this mica was found in Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan is Mexico. It's easy for you to go there. It's just about 30 kilometers out of Mexico City. There is there are gigantic pyramids in the so-called Street of the Dead in the center. And just near to the Street of the Dead, it's only about 15 meters away, just near to a pyramid, is a chamber, a subterranean chamber, and since a few years it's open, and then you can open the, how you call it, the lid, And then you see mica. It's all mica. The full chamber is filled with mica. And this is a real mystery. The archaeologists in Mexico, they do not know what is this mica for? Where does mica come from? But now mica were found not only in Mexico, in Teotihuacan, in at least 4 other places, including Tikal, which is Maya, including Egypt, etc. Now, in the old Hindu books, in the Mahabharata, in the 5th book, the Mausalapurva, they describe different flying objects called vimanas. And these vimanas needed some special fuel. The fuel is a mixture of different components, and one of the components was mica. So maybe mica, the deposit of mica and the different places around the world was because they needed it was a component of their fuel. Without mica, they could not fly.
The other thing for me when we talk about this, which is so important, is that Orthodox academia is going to say that Stone Age man didn't have the ability to do, certainly in Peru, no writing, no, there was, all of that stuff was lacking, paper and things like that. But the intelligence of doing work with mica or other materials back then, either we were smarter than we're giving credit for or not. But you can't have it back. You can't have it both ways. Why is it, Eric, that modern academia will fight this and say that it was Stone Age man that was doing it? Well, if it was Stone Age man, they didn't have the intelligence to do it. Why won't they give in? Why this pushback?
You see, the modern archaeology, everything is based on evolution. Evolution starts slowly. You have a technical evolution, and it becomes bigger. Our knowledge becomes bigger. Our technology becomes more complicated, etc. They say it's all a process of evolution, which I do not agree. It's not only a process of evolution. It is quite possible, like the rabbi said before, that some unknown 100,000 of years ago or whatever, we had already a high civilization here. But this discredits evolution, the story of evolution. So just because of this dogma of evolution, they are saying, oh, this is not possible.
Could I add?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I actually, hold that note. We're all wearing the famous, from Chariots of the Gods, the Colombian jet, right? Mm-hmm. What year were these created?
Created?
Yeah. What year?
Like actually the replicas?
Yeah, no, the real ones. The real ones, when they came out of the river in Colombia, yes.
Well, that was found in a tomb in Colombia, in a tomb which is at least about 1,500 BC, so seen from today, 3,500
Exactly.
3,500 years
Now,
back.
I'm sorry, but we're all wearing the pins tonight. I stole this one from Giorgio. There's only one thing that represents, and that's a jet.
Well, it's on display as an insect model.
Yes, as an insect. And it's this kind of stuff that we get from Chariots of the Gods. I'll never forget the first time that I saw this. There's only one thing that is. It's not an insect. It's not a bug. They saw something, right? Yes. They recreated it. There was something going on back then, but yet they want us to believe that is a bug.
But one thing, the original was found in a tomb of a very rich Indian chief. We don't know his names. And the original is of gold, original full pure gold. If it would have been simply an insect, they never adored an insect in gold. Forget it. It must have something much higher than an insect. Something which they adored, which they prayed to, which they wish to come back. By the way, the original of it, since many years, is in the Gold Museum in Bogota, at the National Bank in Bogota, open for tourists. You can go there and you see it behind thick glass. You can photograph it, the original.
Yeah, the last thing you're going to do with gold so many years ago, something so precious, so important, is make a model of a fly. I just don't.
It's all garbage.
I don't see that a good use of resources. And staying on this, Eric, when this information has come forward, like Pakal, Pumapunku, all of these ancient pieces of evidence. Each one of them gets fought. And I know that we keep going back to this, but everything gets fought when, if you went to anybody on the street and said, what does this represent to you? What does this represent? What does this look like to you? They're going to give you an honest answer. But instead, we get fought. I don't is it because they have blinders on and they don't want to see what we see?
Exactly, they have blinders on. They don't want to see what is normal. They don't think normally anymore. They think complicated.
Could I add to two
Yes,
things?
Linda, go ahead.
I think it's because power brokers with a capital P and a capital B have been manipulating the planet for so long, and the power brokers may not necessarily be Homo sapien sapien. ...
Yeah, clarify.
And tomorrow, I'm going to show here in a workshop 2 pieces of an hour I'm doing with a Navy SEAL who is backlighted and voice altered about Antarctica. And this relates to what we're talking about in terms of the age of this and the age of so many things that Homo sapien sapien could not have anything to do with. And tomorrow I'm going to, in addition to having he's a real Navy SEAL. I think he is the first ever of a Navy SEAL on record who has walked in this underground archaeology under 2 miles of ice in Antarctica on a mission. And to hear him talk. And
He's here?
In my video.
Oh, okay. I was like, I want to meet this guy.
No, I've been unfolding this on my YouTube channel.
Right.
And
No,
now
I
I'm
thought-
going to do this. That I don't think anybody's ever heard a Navy SEAL who has walked in this archaeology 2 miles down under ice.
Is this somebody that would go public?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's if I told you it's taken me 2 years to get to this point. And in those 2 years, my life has been threatened, his life has been threatened. It's been unreal. And that's why I hope everybody comes tomorrow to hear him. He deserves to be heard. And people say, well, why would somebody who was a Navy SEAL speak out to you? It's very interesting that some of the people who have been in special forces have seen me on television in Ancient Aliens and now the YouTube channel that I do on Wednesdays. And I'm getting more and more communications than I ever have had before. Maybe it has something to do with the administration, I'm not sure. But here's what it boils down to. If there are 62 acre, and this is what we've measured by ground penetrating and ground ice penetrating radar, the 2 miles down in a specific latitude and longitude, which I know where it is, but I'm trying to also be responsible, and I'm not giving that out yet, but I'm giving the general area. There's half a dozen, 62 acres each. The structures are huge, 80-foot tall ceilings, 30, 40-foot corridors. Energy is still in them as the Special Forces mission move through. Light, only it's a lime green, but it reacts to what is moving. They look for the energy sources. We're trying to understand how is this 2 miles under the ice still powered. But here is, if you leave tonight with no other thing to think about, it is this. I asked the SEAL and another one who's been there 3 times that I don't have on video yet. And I said, how could these have been built with ice, 2 miles of ice? And they said, well, it's our understanding that it was built before. You can start doing this yourself. Go to Google, go to Wikipedia, go to geophysics, and say, when was the last time that Antarctica was free of ice. It's fascinating. You would think in this world that we would have an exact answer. It's not clear. A consensus is 34 million years ago. And let me just give you a couple of things to think about. If you go back to Gondwana land and Pangaea, when all the world land was congealed, let's call it that, about 100 million years ago, something was happening volcanically, chaos in the Earth's magma, who knows. A round piece of land as wide as the United States. Antarctica is as wide as the United States. It's huge. It has a circular shape, not a circle, a circular shape. It starts coming down between 100 million years ago and 34 million years ago, and during that entire period, it was hot, tropical. The pollen is palm trees and all the things that would grow only in certain temperatures. From 34 million years ago to 33 million years ago, something dramatic happened. That's when, by 33 million, ice was building up over the entire continent that had moved down to the South Pole. It had been in the South Pole position and was tropical, hot. Something happened. As the seal and I talked, if that geophysical timeline is true, and that's right now I'm posing it as a thought exercise, then all of those 62-acre sites, 2 miles under ice, the seals are getting to by submarines. There is a submarine entrance, whoever made it. They have other ways of getting. And there are 6 of these, or 7, and the structure is black basalt. It is one of the hardest stones on planet Earth. It's up there with granite. And everything is made out of this black basalt with hieroglyphs and patterns that are carved all over. The doors of sections that the Navy SEAL that you will hear tomorrow walked, because his job was to come and extract an archaeologist who was there photographing all of the symbols, all of the patterns. They don't know what the language is. It looks a little bit like Egyptian, a little bit like Mayan, and it's not known. He said, you walk up, and they had measured, each door in this huge thing was 18 feet thick. How would you even make anything with an 18-foot solid black basalt door that would even move? And he said, and all they had to do was take their index finger and touch it. And that on the upper left and the lower left of this 18-foot thick black basalt were technologies. Those were his terms. They didn't understand it at all. If they just touched the door, it opened. They would walk through, these are seals, they would turn around, and on the back side of each door was the same pattern. I took a notebook. I don't like to front load with anybody. This was very dangerous, what I was doing. The only way I could do it was me videotaping. And I put together a notebook that had a whole bunch of different things in it. And I just asked him, I said, can you just flip through and see if there's anything that resembles what you saw on the other side of these doors?
What did he find?
And
Tell me right now. I'm on the edge of my seat.
it was a circle,
Yeah.
12 lines with 2 90-degree angles at the end, a ring. It's the black sun. He knew nothing about the black sun with Hitler. It was on the back side of each of those doors. If it's 34 million years old, The black sun antecedent has absolutely nothing to do with Homo sapiens sapien or Neanderthalensis or Denisovans or Homo erectus. The standing up primates on planet Earth are only 2 million years old. Put it in your mind in a fraction, 2 million over 34 million. Bottom line, this planet, this solar system, has had habitation that would go back millions and millions and millions of years before the first primate ever stood up on Earth. If our planet is a laboratory, which I think it is, the most important part of what humans are, as I'm becoming convinced, is our soul. And that the soul is not mythological. It's not boxed up in pasteurized religions. It's the part of us that gives animus to life. And that the story that is unfolding right now as we go forward in 2019, I think, is that we have to break open that headline. We are not alone in this universe. We never have been. Tremendous amounts of stuff have been there long ago, just like Michio Kaku has described. But that the irony of all of this is, if we are somebody else's androids, that something in the divine field pulled the rug out of the android makers. And I think that Homo sapiens sapien has a soul that may be unlike anything else in this universe. And if we knew it and we lived it, how could we possibly kill each other?
Thank you for that, Linda. Linda Moulton Howe. Do you need a tissue? I'm a little choked up. Rabbi.
There's a lot.
Yeah, that was wow. Rabbi, based on what Linda just stated and your statements about us leaving this planet, right? A higher civilization in millions of years ago. How do you respond to that? Does this line up with what you have been suggesting? And the text?
Yeah, well, like the Bible says, Ein kol hadash tahat hashemesh. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything that we've been sharing here, like I've been trying to say, there's nothing new here, right? When we're talking about all these discoveries with the Nazca lines and things like that, there's nothing new here. I don't consider these to be amazing as many people do. The question is, why do we consider these things wonderful or amazing or revelatory? And the answer is, and Linda understands this, it's not so much what we're discovering as much as what have we been taught?
Exactly.
Well,
Right.
Rabbi, I want you to expand for the audience,
Let
though.
me expand on this for a quick second.
Okay,
Because
okay.
Eric hit on this. All right. Eric hit on this, right? When he was facing all kinds of opposition because we have been taught what to believe. We have been given a pattern that this is the accepted norm. And when we find so many things which don't fit into that pattern, then we consider them to be wonderful, amazing, whatever. Whereas the truth is, these things have been the norm, and that which we have received as information is a lie.
And this is what I want you to, thank you for that. And this is what I want you to, for the audience, so, and those listening and watching around the world, I want them to understand what you are talking about here. For clarification, how long ago would this civilization have started to advance far enough to leave this planet? We're talking about us that is coming back and visiting.
Yeah.
I want you to be very clear so they understand
Okay,
what you're trying to say.
Let's be very clear, and I will speak again from the point of view as described in traditional Orthodox Torah Kabbalistic literature. Not my own perspectives, not my own interpretations. There it's been well known that which we call pre-Adamic civilizations, that according to some, there's been life on Earth maybe dating back billions of years. We believe, of course, that it all is by a divine design, a divine plan of God. And it is clearly understood, even echoed within the biblical tradition, that one of the earliest civilizations, most likely on Earth, was of a reptilian form. We read about this and misunderstand this from the serpent in the Bible, the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But we have from our tradition well known that the serpent, as we know from the Bible, spoke. But we know that it stood erect, had arms and legs, and was obviously intelligent. If that's not a reptilian humanoid predating Adamic civilization, well, there it is right there in the Bible. These things, again, are not revelatory to us. It is understood that this was just a representative of a much older, ancient race of beings referred to in earlier literature, a book called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, readily available in English. A group called the Teli, T-E-L-I, were referred to as the dragons. Curious statement made about them, that they rule in the universe like a king upon the throne. Who are these entities? We have literature dating back literally thousands of years who describe who they are, what they are. And they're understood to be an advanced race of dragons, reptilian entities who, not like in the Western traditions, who are viewed to be evil, bad, fallen angels and the like, but rather close to God, holy. Reference actually to the book of Isaiah chapter 6, where it speaks about the seraphim. Most people do not understand that word correctly. The word seraph in Hebrew doesn't mean enlightened, burning ones. That would be soref. But seraph, difference of vowels, means a reptilian. Based in the book of Numbers, where it says Moses put the, on the staff, a serpent, a symbol of a serpent. It was a seraph. This is a race, the seraphim, or reptilian entities. Just like in the Chinese tradition and the ancient Judaic tradition, we have a clear Mesorah, an ancient tradition of an ancient race. Indigenous to this earth, most likely. Millions of years old, very possible. There is nothing in the original Hebraic Torah Kabbalistic record to contradict any of these things. And that's why we don't consider it such a profound revelation. Simply because we've known about these things for thousands of years.
So, and I'm not making light of this, I'm not being cavalier, but when you hear somebody say, a witness, a contactee, say, then I saw the reptilians, they came in my room, we had a conversation, for you, your reaction is, we've been writing about that for years.
Yeah, I could tell you Rabbi Menachem Tziyuni wrote about that in the 14th century. I could tell you Rabbi Yehuda Hasid wrote about that in the 11th century. And I can tell you about Rabbi Yehuda Fatih, who wrote about that in the 19th, 20th century. These things have been around for a while. But again, it's because we've been taught these things are not true. These things do not happen. That when people have these experiences, then it becomes this revelatory, profound experience. Linda and I, again, we were sharing before coming up here, and you were sharing about, out-of-body experiences.
Out-of-body of children.
And Linda was saying how, she's had her, I've had mine. Yeah. And people say, wow, that's so profound, it's so unique. And no, it's not. It's actually rather common. It's just that we're taught not to pay attention to these things, not to believe in these things.
And not to talk about them with anyone.
Right, because mystical experiences in general are frowned upon. They're looked down. They're not rational, analytical, or whatever we want to call them. And as such, because we've created this little itsy-bitsy box of what we accept, and anything outside the box, we don't accept or believe. And aren't we always taught to think outside the box? I mean,
do you know how many people are in this room right now going, I want to hang out with the rabbi. I want to hang out with this guy. One last question, Rabbi, if you would. You are, like you said, you were exposed to this at the age of 30, relative newcomer in all regards, but Ancient Aliens is a worldwide phenomenon. It is something that it reaches out beyond this community to people that are asking these questions. What does that suggest to you? That you don't have to be a contactee or somebody that believes in UFOs, that they are asking these questions that Ancient Aliens is presenting.
This is a point that I made with the production staff of Prometheus Entertainment, who makes the Ancient Alien program. And we had our first conference in Santa Clarita. We had, what was it, 10, 15,000 people? Linda, you were there. Jason, you were there. We had an amazing following there. I turned to Kevin Burns, and I said, Kevin, this is not people coming here to meet their favorite stars. I mean, I'm not a star. These are people who are coming, like people are coming here. They have questions. They're pursuers. They want to know. I said, Kevin, you've created a phenomena, and it's part and parcel of a growing evolution of consciousness, which, if you want to speak about it from a religious point of view, call it pre-messianic revelations, the coming of the Messiah, whatever our traditions might be on that, the dawning of a new age, the age of Aquarius, whatever. Truth is coming out. Eric is part of that. Somehow, and this is something I shared with Eric before, somehow, somewhere, something or someone or somehow put the idea in his head all those years ago. Think about these things. Write this book. Put it together, right? I don't think Eric could say after the fact, oh yeah, I sat down 50 years ago and I knew all of this was going to happen.
Right.
No, I don't think so. We don't think like that. But somehow, somewhere, whatever power that be did. And Eric became that conduit. And here we are each now as individual conduits in our own way, participating, contributing to the greater whole of things. And Linda, in my opinion, said it very accurately about, what we call, if you will, the holiness of souls.
Yeah.
The concept of the evolution that we're all, if you will, like Master Yoda said, luminescent beings, not this crude matter.
Right.
And I don't know if this is a laboratory or an experiment or whatever. I mean, I don't have access to that kind of information. But what it is that we are evolving entities. We're growing in awareness, and that's happening. So yeah, this is all part and parcel of whatever was then with whoever they were, whether it be the Tili or pre-Adamics or whatever. We're maturing. Like Arthur C. Clarke would have said in his book, this is childhood's end. And
That's
whether
right.
the human, whether the planet is going to evolve into a different dimension or whatever, but we're at that place right now, and this conference is part and parcel of it.
Right.
You're a rock star.
All right, thank you.
Rock star. Billy Carson, staying on the same subject, and I'm going to come this way, staying on the same subject. Forbidden knowledge. That's exactly what you're about.
Yeah.
And you literally have millions of followers on social media following something called forbidden knowledge.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
How hungry is the world for this? And what does Ancient Aliens and Chariots of the Gods play into?
Well, I started this a very long time ago in terms of spreading knowledge and information. And when I first started, it was just through private meetings with a small group of people. And you couldn't talk about aliens and ancient civilizations and UFOs, out in the open, because you'd be considered a freak or a crazy person or whatever. But over time, I saw it go from private meetings to exchanging conspiracies on VHS tapes, to then exchanging information on CDs, then DVDs, and then now, mainstream cable and now streaming networks. So I've seen the evolution of the growth of consciousness and the acceptance of this information, which shouldn't be alternative information. It should be the standard information, but we're calling it alternative for now as we grow into it. But I've seen this evolution occur in consciousness going all the way back from the 1980s all the way till now, 2019 going into 2020. And I can just see, through even with my own stuff, through the internet with forums and websites and blogs and now social media, it's just incredible. And so now you go out to restaurants and you'll hear people in the table behind you talking about aliens or UFOs or conspiracies or crystals or spirituality, getting away from, all these different types of things. Just, you can hear the consciousness evolving through the people. So I'm just really excited. This is a great time to be alive. I'm so happy to be a part of this. I feel like I'm one of the pioneers of this whole movement, even though, Eric Von Daniken is one of the great-grandfather of the movement, so to speak, because I really feel like that information kickstarted so many people and got the wheels turning, and everybody knows somebody that you don't know. So eventually that information ended up getting to me, and then I was able to take the information and turn me into a researcher, and then from there I was able to begin to spread that information, and it's just spreading like that exponentially. And I really do believe that through the movement of our planet, our solar system through the galaxy, and the amount of cosmic rays that we're absorbing, especially since we passed through the galactic equator back in 2012, and now we're headed into the age of Aquarius by 2025. I really do believe that a lot of those, the different gravitational pulls, cosmic rays, all have a direct effect on human consciousness and DNA. And I really do believe that also is part and parcel, a little bit of the cause for some of this evolution in consciousness, and also the amount of people that are now automatically starting to wake up and want to know more information, starting to ask questions that they never asked before, starting to look at alternative news and things like that to try to get more information. And I think that we're on a great path, and I really think that our future is very, very bright, and we're probably ushering the human race into the Silver Age, and then eventually into the Golden. Maybe if we can get some stem cells going, I can make it to the Golden Age.
Now, the audience probably doesn't know what I'm about to say about you, but Billy also has his own record label. And about 6 months ago, one of his artists charted on Billboard, four charts,
Yes,
or
yes,
six?
sir. Four charts for 8 weeks.
Four charts charted. And with songs like Anunnaki. I'm not making this up. And I want you to comment briefly on that, where you are obviously putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to this and forbidden knowledge, to go into the hip-hop community like that and have an extremely successful album. I talked about this on Coast and Fade to Black, and you wrote a song called Fade to Black that was released as a single.
Yeah.
And you fully accept what social media, other forms of media, will do to spread the message. And I want to commend you for that. I want your comments.
Thank you. Yeah, I started a label called Pantheon Elite Records, and the whole concept behind it was I was looking for a way to spread more information to more people through music, because music is the biggest medium or source to send information out in the world. There's nothing bigger, I think, than music. And so I figured if I can tap into the younger crowd who doesn't know who Forbidden Knowledge is, who is Billy Carson, they don't know who I am. I'm just this old guy up here. So I said, if I can get the beats that the kids love, because everybody hears the beat first before they know the words. You never know the words instantaneously. You always hear the beat first. So I said, if I can get the beats down and then lace those beats with verses that have information about consciousness, about chakras, about ancient history, about conspiracies, and all these different types of things, then eventually they'll start to learn the words. And when they start learning the words, they're going to say, well, what am I talking about? What is an Anunnaki? What is a false flag? And and then they're going to go on Google. And it worked. So I started creating all of these researchers.
How great is that?
Yeah. And it was an incredible vision that I received, that I downloaded from the universe, and came into me, and I started looking for an artist, and I found a phenomenal artist named Donnie Arcade, and me and him partnered up. And since then, we've brought a couple more artists on, and we've done phenomenal. Like you said, we charted on Billboard with songs like Anunnaki and Words from My Subconscious, which talks about how the subconscious works, 7 chakras. So we explain the 7 chakras in a rap song and how the chakra system works.
This is no joke, by the way. This is no joke.
To the ethereal realm, and crystal technology. We go, metaphysics. We talk about so many different, of course, in ancient history. And
the videos are incredible too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So it's been a very good, big success, and we're looking forward to growing and continue to put out more information and more knowledge and more new tracks.
So when you're going down the street and you see a couple of kids, Anunnaki, you know what's up. They may not know what's up, but they're going to go home and Google it, right?
They're going to go home and Google it. They always do. I mean, we've been on radio shows, and even the radio hosts would be like, man, we've been playing this song. We've been getting a lot of calls to play it over and over again. And, I just got to ask you, man, what is this? What is this Anunnaki? Or what is, he goes, I just got to hear from you, because when I went on Google, it talked about reptilian aliens. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's just amazing to see that development of consciousness and people actually accepting this music and playing it millions and millions of times. And what I did was I said, okay, how can I get this music out without spending millions of dollars like mainstream record labels? So I already had the platform through Forbidden Knowledge putting out content that would go viral. Every day I probably make 3 or 4 posts that go viral that day. I mean, 200, 300, 400,000 views, sometimes millions in a day. So I said, I'm going to start putting the music behind the content. So I would make videos that show, depict information about whether it's ancient history or conspiracies or medicine or technology, and I will put the music playing in the background and then watch the post go viral. And I would see a post go viral, 2-3 million views. The song gets played 2-3 million times in a few days. The next thing you know, it's got 10,000 downloads or 20,000 streams on Apple Music or whatever, and you go in the back door that way. You got to know how to play in the Matrix.
Thank you so much for that, Billy.
Okay.
It's so impressive. I remember when the album charted, you and I are friends, and we had just, we were somewhere traveling together. And I get back to L.A., and I contact Donnie to bring him on Coast. And I felt so good about it. But there's one thing you have to do. You have to trust but verify. That's what you do, right? So I jump on, and I look up Billboard charts. Donnie Arcade, right there, Anunnaki, chart number 2, chart number 3, live. And I was so proud of what you guys put together, and just to see Anunnaki charting on Billboard, right? Thank you for that, Billy. Just incredible. Hey, Jason, do you have Anunnaki on your phone? Have you been spinning that?
No, unfortunately, I do not.
Okay.
Never heard the song, but I will have to check that out. That's awesome.
It's pretty amazing. Jason, you're a tech guy. You're a startup guy. That's what you do. And you've got this little side gig called Ancient Aliens and this other life. I just have to ask for everybody in this room, do the people that you work with know about your other life? Do they come in and go, dude, I saw you on Ancient Aliens last night? Or are they paying attention? Or do they ask questions? Or do you have a line drawn in the sand?
I've kind of always kept a line drawn in the sand over the last, let's say, 10 years of my professional, how I make money versus doing the research. But as several other colleagues have pointed out here, the climate has been changing. And so it's very gratifying that it's moved from small groups to appropriate things like this, where, yeah, it is a little bit more mainstream now, and that I don't have to be as worried about my professional career intermingling into my hobby, because it's reached a new plateau where it's like, oh, Ancient Aliens, man, that stuff's cool. And it hasn't always been that way. It was very much, like a dark topic that, as Billy pointed out, you couldn't articulate it in the right way, or else you'd come across weird. So that climate has changed, and I'm very grateful for that, because there's surface topics like aliens and UFOs and Anunnaki, but as you hear from some of these other researchers like Ariel and such, there are deeper topics that we're all aware of, and we're really, really trying to get to the bottom of these answers. Meaning, all the great ancient cultures that we know of, they all speak of and have been influenced by some lost race, and we don't know who they are. We could call them gods. You could call them some pre-Adamic population. Atlanteans, that's too corny. But the point is, there are civilizations touching Göbekli Tepe and the Mayans and the Hindus and the Sumerian. All of them have been influenced by some lost race that was globally going around and teaching this knowledge. That's some really interesting stuff, is trying to unlock these doors beyond the recorded history books of today and bring out new information. So that's where I really get jazzed, is history isn't linear, that shows where people in the past were dumb and we're getting smarter. No, the further back you go, you find much more brilliance in architecture and mathematics, because more than likely there is a cyclical process. We've heard of the Dark Ages, the Golden Age, you hear these terms, but there are over 30 ancient cultures that used astronomy as a guide for time. And so we hear terms like precession and things like that, that today we don't understand. If I ask the audience who understands precession, you might see one or two hands. But these are leading scientific terms that the people up here, and through shows like Ancient Aliens, are pushing the mainstream science forward and teaching them what the real truth is. So that's what I'm very grateful to be a part of. It's an honor.
Thank you for that, Jason. Just recently, it was last year, but Jason invites Rita and I down to his house for a cookout. And okay, so we go down. And what he doesn't tell me is the other guests at the house were his coworkers, right? And so I'm odd man out, man, right? I'm not a techie. I'm not a brainiac. But we had a lot of fun. So anyway, Jason introduces me to everybody like this. He goes, "Oh, by the way, everybody, Jimmy's on the radio talking about UFOs. That's his gig." Am I stretching the truth?
Dude, you were the most popular person at the...
They would not stop talking UFOs all afternoon. It was incredible. It was like they were free. They're out of the closet. They were able to talk about these things with somebody that was not going to ridicule. And they had questions, Jason. Yeah. They had questions for you, too, because they didn't know a whole lot about what was really going on.
You brought up a lot of interesting eye-opener points there that, again, mainstream people aren't usually aware of. But if you hear it in the right emotional context, a little light should go off and allow you to question whether you believe it or not. Go to Google and start looking around.
It was so much fun to go through, and you threw me under the bus. But what it showed me was that it doesn't matter when you're walking down the street and you're passing somebody. Don't judge, because they have the same questions that you do. They may not show it. They may not walk around with one of these pins on, right? I was abducted UFO T-shirt. They may not do that. But they have the same questions that all of us do, and that was an amazing afternoon, very eye-opening for me. All right, let's Linda. I want to go straight back to you, talking about the forbidden knowledge side of all of this. It's truly forbidden. It was such a taboo subject for so many years. Today, because of the efforts of yourself and Eric, where we can actually go and speak about this like I did at Jason's house, and Billy releasing albums, the rabbi on Ancient Aliens speaking about ancient Hebrew text, where for all of this now, are we at a point in society, is disclosure closed? Are we able to talk about this stuff comfortably?
Well, I'll tell you, a signal is coming from Harvard University. The chair of the astronomy department is Avi Loeb.
He's amazing.
And he emails me all the time, as well as his colleagues, as he keeps putting out more and more papers. And the one subject that Avi Loeb, he is the chairman of the Department of Astronomy at Harvard University. He is on the board for Starshot. He is involved with major issues having to do with all things related to us getting off the planet, going to Mars, getting out into the solar system. Well, what I'm coming to is that he has for now, because I've interviewed him 3 times about Oumuamua. That was that long, flat thing that came through, and it is defined as the very first interstellar I guess you would say that the human mind, it's the first time ever in human history that leaders in science said this is from X and it's interstellar and it's never been here before. Well, within 9 months of its appearance, and all of, you may not know this is one piece to remember. This object that was like a ratio of 200 feet long and something like 40, 50 feet wide, that it's very long and thin, that when they were doing calculations, it came toward the sun, then it did a hairpin turn, literally like this. You can see the animation of all the astronomers who studied this and were amazed. And when it came around on this other side of the hairpin turn, after it came from the sun, it was headed toward the Earth. It took off. It was going 57,000 miles an hour.
It increased in
Well, this
speed.
is what I'm coming to.
Yes.
It's 57,000 miles an hour. Well, you don't have to jump. And then it comes around this side of the hairpin, and it went up to 96,000 miles an hour. And there was not one possible signature that there was any ice, not a comet, wasn't gassing. How could it go from 57,000 to 96,000 miles an hour? And then Avi Loeb started writing papers saying that his hypothesis was that this is an ancient craft and still operating. This is from the chairman of the astronomy department at Harvard.
He will not let his foot off the gas on this. He is steadfast.
He sent me at least a dozen papers just in the last year.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So what does that say to you? Are we getting close to something? When he, last week, the latest press release from him and his statements, which I'm sure that you heard from him, I did, that he's talking about the possibility of a solar sail, and that this is a very thin structure that is wrapped up, but that's what is going on here. And again, he won't give up on this. He's got a lot of pressure to change his mind, but he's not.
Okay, I wanted everybody's minds to be blown tomorrow when you get to hear.
No, what about tonight, right now?
Wait.
Right?
It's an answer to your question. The Navy SEAL speaks from information on the 8th floor of the National Security Agency about Oumuamua. And the NSA says it's a derelict spacecraft that has come from the constellation Lyra.
That's what I'm talking about.
I know, I'm not kidding. Why are we as a planet not being told this information? How in the hell have we ended up on a concocted planet where only a handful of people have the right to even know that something that comes through that is the first interstellar object, and that the head of the Harvard and SEALs and everybody else knows that it is some form of spacecraft, and the rest of us are told to go away?
Linda for president 2020.
I'll take
Right there. Right there. I'll sign that one.
Open this up.
Eric,
Yes.
disclosure. Is that a word that you're concerned with?
Of course. I absolutely agree with her. Why are these things not coming to public? Why?
Yes.
What's wrong with our media? As your president, I'm sorry, I'm just a visitor from Switzerland. As your president says, it's a lot of fake news here is going on.
Yes.
Oh,
It's horrible. So
There's
I
no
just-
fake news in Switzerland, Eric.
Of course.
Okay,
The world is full of fake news. That's his fault. I just saw a video from a president from a Russian republic. I don't forget his name. I forgot his name because it's a complicated Russian name. The president of a republic in Russia. Before the camera, he said he was abducted by extraterrestrials.
Oh, yes.
And then in the original Russian interview, I saw the original with translation. The interviewer asked the president, said, but Mr. President, do you know you will be ridiculed because of this? He said, yes, I know, I will be ridiculed. Why do you go to public and say it? Because the extraterrestrials asked me to go to public. So they want that the situation changes. You know, we are talking about the rabbi talking about ages and maybe ideas coming from outside. First of all, when I write my books, I write it in my mother language, which is German language. Then some of these books are translated, and from time to time I have to read the translations. For example, the French translation, I speak fluently French, simply to control if the translation is correct. And then I read my own books, which I have written 2 years before. And I'm wondering myself, Eric, how do you get to this idea? Where did this come from? And the information is always correct. So maybe there is something like an influence. We are never sure. Yeah. And concerning some datings, I just remember, so 2,500 years ago, the Greek historian Herodotus, maybe you heard in school from him, Herodotus, he was in Egypt. He was 450 BC in Egypt, 2,500 years from now. And he was living in Egypt in today's Luxor. At that time, the name was Thebes. And he writes, in the second book of history, he writes that the priests of Thebes showed him, Herodotus, 241 statues made out of stone and wood. And the high priest gave to every statue an explanation. That was his name, he was living from then, and so on. 248 statues. And at the end of the road, the high priest said, these 248 statues, 41 statues, represent 11,340 years. At that time, the gods from the firmament were among the humans. Since that time, they have not returned. Now, 11,340 years. But Herodot made these statements 2,500 years from now on. So we have to add the 2,500 years from now to Herodot. Roughly 14,000 years ago, according to Herodotus, the gods from outer space were among the humans. We never hear about this information. Mm-hmm. But you can read it in the book of Herodotus, the second book of history. You never hear something because it contradicts evolution. Accordingly to Egyptology, the history of Egypt starts roughly 3,000 BC, but never 14,000 BC.
Göbekli Tepe is
Göbekli
12,000.
Tepe.
It's 12,000 years old.
I know. Yeah,
and that is clearly something truly bizarre because I have stood there in the middle of it. And anywhere else I've been on the planet, I could sort of feel the gestalt of it. And when you're in the center of Göbekli Tepe, what hits you is this is totally you can't feel it. You can't understand what you are in. You are looking at creatures that are three-dimensionally. It's like you took limestone that weighed 15 tons and you did an intricate animal. It's not glued on. Somebody had the ability to do.
You had to plan that.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
And then you realize that you can't get a feel for what it is. What is this place with 300 and some huge pillars and rings? And the first morning that we were there on June 13th, 2012, we were deliberately waiting for the sun to come up, and I was standing. It's in a bowl. So when you're up here, Göbekli Tepe is actually down like this, and this is where the archaeology is. And I was just so curious whether when the first rays of the sun, June 13th was close to the solstice, would any of those rays penetrate down into this bowl? And two things did. And I did this 180-degree turn and could see, and so I started walking down to them, and that's when I had this feeling that I'd never been any place on Earth ever that was that weird, that was that foreign, that was nothing. I couldn't feel anything. And Robert Schoch, the geologist, he got his PhD at Yale. He knows quite a bit about geology. He came down and he was standing next to me and he said, you know, I've been looking at the top of all these T-shaped limestone pillars. And he said, the only thing that I can get from this place is these are like tuning forks. And he said, and what if this whole place was made to have something come from above and vibrate a frequency to do X? And he meant UFOs.
May I just a remark here?
Yes.
Göbekli Tepe is a place.
Say it again. How did you say it?
Göbekli Tepe in German.
I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
So, Abraham, you know the biblical Abraham, was living he was burned just 60 kilometers away from Göbekli Tepe. Nobody knows this. And Abraham, there is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, is the Abraham scroll. There in the first person, he says, it was evening when he heard a noise in the space. Just near to today's Göbekli, he heard a noise in the space. And then all of a sudden, a light came down. And then two beings looking like human, but different to human because they did not breathe like humans. They had something before the haze. No, Abraham Apocalypse in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then he said, I never saw beings like these on earth. These two beings, they take him, Abraham, up into the sky. He goes up, he flies over the earth. He's up there, he says, I wish to fall downward to the earth. If somebody says, I wish to fall downward, he's not on the earth. And he described the round, the circum of the earth, all in the Abraham Apocryphic, just near to Göbekli Tepe. So maybe this is a link together, space, yeah.
Man, I got to learn how to say it like you. That's incredible.
The Turks say Göbekli Tepe. When you're there, the Turks say Göbekli Tepe.
They need to listen to some of my commercials. You guys get it, don't you? You guys get the humor there.
It means Potbelly Hill.
Yes, it does. It does. Eric, I have to ask you something very serious here about Göbekli Tepe, which is this. When it was discovered, 1995, Klaus, when it was discovered, were you expecting it?
94.
94.
Oh, yeah.
Were you expecting it? Were you anxious to say this is what I've been on about?
No.
It gives you the opportunity to do that, doesn't it?
I was very surprised about that finding. I was very curious. By the way, I was personally never there. In my books, I only write about things which I know in person, which I touch, which I smell, which I know the history. Until today, I was never there in person. So that's why I have never published something about Göbekli Tepe. But there is another place in Indonesia called Gunung Padang, and it's even older than Göbekli Tepe.
26,000?
Yeah, some 22,000.
Yeah.
I was there, so all this story of evolution just crashed down. Forget it.
Well,
Go ahead, Linda.
yeah, let me share just one thing, that when you go to the museum that is in Sanlurfa, about maybe 3 or 4 miles from the site, they have been taking the most valuable pieces that they have been digging and getting the dirt away because people started stealing. It was an open archaeological site. There was nothing around it when we were there. And believe it or not, people were coming and stealing things that were archaeological. So they did a deal with the Sanlurfa Museum. And the day we went in there, as a journalist, I have always had this thing about going with my camera when I don't know anything. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm seeing, and taking photos as I go. And I found it to be really valuable in my work. So I came into the museum with that, doing this, taking photos as I was moving around at different things and getting teeny bits of lecture. And there was a room in the back. And so I am approaching. I've never been there. There's nobody around me. I'm just taking pictures. And I see something that's about 6, 7 feet tall. And so I'm working my way toward it, wondering, what is this? And I come in from the side. And it looks like something 6 or 7 feet tall, sort of a reddish stone that looked like it had serpents going down the side. Now, I come around now to the front. So this is my very first encounter from the front. And the snakes are knees. Imagine, and at the top, once upon a time, there was something up here, a face, and something had obliterated the face, even carved it in. You can see the next creature here. They're not human. It looks like a creature, and it has knees, and this is part of what looks like snakes from the side. And then there's another head and another body and more knees.
What are you suggesting?
And
I'm trying to
then-
picture this.
And then you come down to the bottom, and there is what looks like a human baby being born from a pubis of these creatures that rise. And as I stood there in a state of absolute shock, thinking of these briefing papers that I have been shown, extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. That is exactly what the statue at Göbekli Tepe, now in the museum, looks like. Creatures that give birth at the bottom to a human infant. It's amazing. And it's 12,000 years
You were
old.
standing in shock. I'm standing in shock right now. In Urfa Man, one of the most famous statues, right?
Yes, he's amazing.
Where you're talking about something that is potentially 15,000 years old, right? Very old.
It's 12,000 according to the German archaeologist.
So, give or take 3,000 years among friends. But what I'm suggesting here is there's a lot of effort that goes into that, and we're talking about primitive Stone Age, pre-Stone Age man, that to have the artistic vision to carve that statue takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of commitment. When you can be out looking for food, protecting, trying to survive the night, that's what you do. But they made a mistake. 6 fingers.
Well,
Do you understand?
as you're standing there, I'm the one who raised that originally on Coast and other things having come
How
back.
do you make a mistake of 6 fingers
Okay.
when you are carving a statue? I ask you.
The issue is, as we were standing there in the museum, the Urfa man is holding, you assume, the penis
Okay,
around.
there's families here.
Well,
He might be holding 2, and that's a whole nother.
and there are 5 fingers on the outside. And you assume that there is another.
Keep it
So
clean,
it's-
right.
It's implied.
Right.
And that would be 6.
That would be 6. And 2 other things.
The testicles are definitely hanging there.
It's hot in here. It's hot. It's hot.
So, schnooning.
It's hot.
Yes, they are there.
As we start to wind down this evening, has this been amazing? Have you guys learned something tonight?
Yes.
I would like to actually do this. Eric, 50 years, you've brought us all together. You have changed lives. You've changed the world. It's not going to stop. You've started something that is just now, it's a train running downhill. The snowball is going to continue to grow. I thank you for all of that. But what I would like to do is I would like to start with the rabbi down in the end. I want everybody to have an opportunity to not only thank you, but let you know why they appreciate your work. Rabbi, I would like for you to take a moment.
Why I appreciate Eric's work? Is that the question? Well, I think I've already answered the question. Like I said, it's part and parcel of something that's happening. All right? I think, again, the point that I want to emphasize is that we often mistakenly believe that, in quote, revelation or insights have to come from spiritual religious figures. That's just not the way reality works. So yeah, I think what Eric has done has made a very, very important contribution to what's going on. It's influenced, obviously, everyone here on this panel to make their own discoveries, their own investigations, the information of which they share with others. And like dominoes, one thing leads to another. So we're in a process, a never-ending story, and we're in the middle of it.
Let me jump in on that point. once these dominoes do start to fall, there is no stopping, is there?
Well, I don't think that they ever stop. You see, I don't believe that we're in a process where something just began, we're in the middle, and then it ends.
Right.
No, I think we're in a continuing cycle of revelation. There's, like it says, again, nothing new under the sun. We're a continuing process of growth, call it evolution, if you will, spiritual revelation, all different terms to describe the same effect. And we're all part of that. Every one of us is part of it. I think that is where we have to recognize, like Linda was talking about the importance of souls. Well, we're all part of a greater whole. And when we recognize as individuals our part, then we recognize our own self-value, our own self-worth, and then where we fit into the greater scheme of things, till ultimately, eventually, we realize that we all are one. And that's exactly what the biblical message was right in the beginning, when it says God created all humanity in the divine image. It was never one group, one race, one type, all.
Rabbi, how did you get so cool?
I don't know. Maybe it's riding my Harley, raising my dogs, having my beautiful wife, you know, a whole bunch of different things. So
Unbelievable. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Billy, we're here tonight celebrating 50 years of Chariots of the Gods. How thankful are you for that book?
I am very thankful to Mr. Von Daniken. I've been a very big fan of his for a very, very long time. His work has led me into research into the Enuma Elish, the Seven Tablets of Creation, the Atrahasis epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas. Because of this man, I literally have become, considered one of the top researchers in the world in ancient history, ancient societies. And I thank him so much for that, because he was able to be a conduit to receive the information and to then take that, to recognize that he had this information and to put it out there in a way that people can consume it. And that's not easy to do. And the next level was that it inspired me to write my own book, which is, now doing very well. And I want to thank you as well, Jimmy, for doing the forward on the next one. But I thank you very much, Eric Von Daniken, because you really have had a very, very huge impact on my life.
Thank you. Very kind of you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
So,
Linda, I'm going to let you have the last word, so you just be patient. You just be patient. Jason.
Yeah, so kind of along the lines of what Billy was saying, it's interesting is when I'm 45, and 20 years ago when I first started talking about these topics, people struggle how to communicate this stuff in a way where the person listening to you is grasping it. And so there's only been a handful of research, and I can literally only name really two. Zacharias Sitchin, God rest his soul. I learned a lot about linguistics from him, mentioning a lot of the things that you said there. And then from Eric, I got a lot of the visuals, a lot of the actual locations. And then some of these things are just basic concepts, but made such an impact when being able to communicate it to others. Things like cargo cult, where you can see in the video Chariots of the Gods. It's a very simple concept. There's these aboriginals. They've made a straw model of a plane. They scrape away a runway, and they're staring for hours, trying to get these planes to come back. It's the same concept of what we were doing for thousands of years in some form. So I thank you, Eric, for being able to arm myself and others with facts and knowledge that give us a passion infusion so that I can explain it to others, and they're like, damn. And that's really a gift, to be able to inspire others to carry that message.
Jason.
So thank you.
thank you very kind.
Thank you so much for that, Jason.
Fertig.
Linda, you've known Eric for a very, very long time. How thankful are you to Eric for 50 years of Chariots of the Gods?
Well, I honor him in every way possible. And I remember the first time that I read Chariots of the Gods, I was at Stanford University. I was working on a master's degree in communication. I was working in the physics department. I was doing a documentary for the medical center, all things related to hard science. But the book just seared me. It went in. And when I look back, That would have been at the end of the 60s. I had no idea that a decade later, in 79, that I would begin a path that would not end for 40-some years into the future, which was to find out why animals around the world were being killed and excisions taken from the body without any blood and no tracks, and even internal organs missing upon necropsy with no surgical excisions on the outside of the body. And having sheriffs say to me, Linda, the perpetrators are creatures from outer space, and then they would back up their own eyewitness stories of having seen beams of light come from circular lights in the sky, with an animal going down to the ground or an animal rising in a beam of light. And I would try to get those witnesses to talk on television about seeing animals rising in a technology that we humans did not have and were not using. And the ranchers would say, I'll never, never, never stand in front of a TV camera because everybody will say I'm crazy. And that's what's so incredible about this moment tonight. We're all beginning to finally talk more with each other about the truth. And that the animal mutilations are a disturbing and strange part of an interaction with other intelligences. And I can say that to you with firm fact beyond all that I have reported. There are hostiles, there are friendlies, and there are neutrals in all of this. You and I and the entire planet deserve to be told all of it. And we're never going to be able to stand up if we aren't told the truth. And this man started this 50 years ago.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very nice of you.
So I'm going to sum that up. Linda's blaming Eric for her change of direction
No,
at
he's
Stanford.
starting it.
Yeah. Eric, thank you. But here's the obvious question, young man. What is next?
We all, each and every human, we have in us a monster. This monster is called curiosity. We all are curious, and we can do nothing against curiosity. Curiosity means asking questions, and curiosity will bring mankind to outer space. Why? Just dream a dream with me. Imagine our scientific community would know everything. We made a hole through our planet. We know the inside of the planet. We have studied all animals, all brains of humans. We know everything, everything. It's a dream. What will we do as next? There are still little lights out there in the Milky Way, in the sky. And because of the monster curiosity, we are forced to ask, and what the hell is this? Sooner or later, we have no chance. We will go out there and find it out. And this will be to find out, where do we come from? How have we developed? This is all curiosity. We are all curious. Me too. As long as my brain functions, and at the moment it functions very well, I go on and write and research, and I never end until I die.
Me too.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you. This is the 2019 Conscious Life Expo here in Los Angeles, broadcasting live around the world. Please stand up and give it up for Jason Martell, Linda Moulton House. Stand up, take a bow. Mr. Eric Von Daniken, Mr. Billy Carson, and Rabbi Ariel Bar Zadok. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, for tonight. I want to thank all of you. And you're not getting loud enough. Everybody have a great evening. Give it up. I want to hear it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Wow,
Thank you so much. Good night.
it was a pleasure to meet you.